What's going on? So like, comment, subscribe, share. I'll have this up sometime tomorrow. Let's get to 100 subs.
This following story was inspired by a Baton Rouge male who worked at a Dairy Queen. I just want to give you a disclaimer that what you're about to witness might make you queasy the next time you order at a fast food restaurant. I personally find this story rather disgusting than scary. Here's what it looked like. I've been in and out of jail in the past, but hey, I never killed anybody, all right? I was arrested on account of theft and illegal substance imports and nothing more. Now that I was free again, I had found serenity at Dairy Queen, where my manager and colleagues were all nice to me. I felt that I could handle any situation no matter how stressful it was, with only one exception: no police officers. I'd survived my first 2 weeks on the job without any commotion, but one day it all went downhill when my worst nightmare entered through those heavenly doors. A stout man in a black long-sleeve uniform with a peaked cap and a shiny badge. I knew it was too good to be true, because no matter how much I wanted Dairy Queen to be free of these vermin, police officers couldn't resist the mouth-watering treats Dairy Queen had to offer. I attempted to ask my colleagues to handle the customer, telling them that I was sufficiently under the weather. However, it was one of those busy days where everybody had something to do, and to make matters worse, we were understaffed. So I had no choice but to handle the task delegated to me. Looking down at the counter, I felt really uncomfortable standing in front of the officer. I thought that perhaps there was a way for me to still get his order without making direct eye contact. But then, moments later, the cop called my name with a familiar tone that instantly sent chills down my spine. Well, 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 look who we have here. It's my old buddy, Mr. Johnson. So, how's life out of prison? He asked aloud with a smug look on his face. I didn't appreciate what he was doing, letting my colleagues and other customers know about my past since it might scare them off or give Dairy Queen a bad image. With my mama's reminders running through my head, I took a deep breath, urging myself to remain calm. It's been swell, officer, I replied monotonously. Then, in a split second, memories of a past that I kept neatly tucked in the archives of my brain rushed back to the surface. I had flashbacks of Officer Ralph forcing me into a corner so that he could beat me up with his truncheon whenever he felt like it. One time, he and another officer took me to the restroom, where I nearly drowned after they dipped my head into a drum of water. But I had to put all those thoughts back where they belonged, in the past. After all, I didn't want to make a scene. Then, moments later, the irksome cop scanned my body from head to waist and said, "From what I recall, this type of job doesn't suit you at all." It was apparent that he was trying to provoke me, but all I said was, "May I take your order, sir?" He shook his head with a smirk and replied, "Sure, I'd like 1 burger, 50 Oreo blizzard cakes, and 80 chocolate blizzards." "All right, that would be $2,355, sir," I replied, my body stiff from all the tension. "Well, maybe you can pay for me, Mr. Johnson," he said, placing his filthy hand on my shoulder. You know, for old time's sake. I wanted to justify my rights and the immorality of his ways, but he sensed that I wanted to retaliate. Officer Ralph tightened his grip, pulled me close to him, and whispered in my ear, saying, "Know your place, boy. I can always visit the manager's office and tell him all the terrible things you did that brought you to jail. I guess you never told him about it, right?" Clenching my fist to control my anger, I replied, "If that's all, I'll take your orders to the kitchen staff and get them ready." "That's more like it," Officer Ralph said, as he chortled delightfully. Going back to the kitchen, I handed over the orders of ice cream cakes to my colleagues. Then, while one of them was on break, I took his place at the hamburger making station and began to cook. Recalling all the horrible things he did to me in prison, I knew of a way that could mitigate my growing apprehension. I knew that there were eyes on us in the kitchen with multiple cameras at every corner. So I had to be tremendously cautious. While the patty was being grilled, I took the bun, positioning myself off camera, and spat on it, leaving behind a clear greenish blob of saliva. It gave me such relief that I chuckled at the thought of him eating that burger. Then I went back to the grilling station, took the patty and placed it neatly inside the bun before wrapping it. When it was finally time to give this customer his food, he came to the counter, took one Oreo Blizzard cake and started mashing it with his bare hand, eating the sponge and licking off the ice cream from his fingers like a pig, displaying a pompous attitude. It feels so good having this much food for free, Mr. Johnson. I think I'm gonna drop by this place more often. He teased me, like the bully that he was. You're gonna regret this, I said, in a low tone. Did you just threaten an officer, Mr. Johnson? He said, his posture straight and his tone condescending. It was nothing. Forget about it. I recoiled, looking down at my hands on the counter. Then, as he returned to his seat with his burger and cakes, I watched him from my peripheral vision as he took a small bite out of the burger. As soon as I turned my back, I heard him scream. What the hell is that? What the hell did you put in my burger? He marched back to the counter, calling out my name, saying, Mr. Johnson, is this your saliva on my burger bun? I didn't utter a single word, but I looked at him menacingly, and he immediately caught on. So he stepped back and spoke to someone on his radio, then asked me to come quietly to his car. All right, Mr. Johnson, you're under arrest for your poor conduct and despicable act, so please put your hands behind your back and step out of the counter, Officer Ralph demanded. Hey, I know my rights, okay? Since you have no proof that my saliva is on your burger bun, I'm staying right here, I replied, confident that I could get away with it. However, 2 other officers came in and forced me into submission as I resisted as long as I could. When we arrived at the police station, they reviewed the surveillance footage and caught me spitting saliva on the bun. Just like that, I was behind bars once again for mingling harmful substances and resisting a cop. Hey, I'm just glad I wasn't charged with attempted murder and that officer isn't dead. You see, I later admitted to the law enforcement that I had several diseases, which would have made that night his last time at Dairy Queen.
You gotta be smart, man. You do the crime, you do the time. That's all it is.
I lived in a small rural town for most of my life. It's the kind of area where everybody knows each other, despite there being miles between most neighbors. I also got a job at just about the only restaurant within a 30-mile radius of my house. The old-fashioned Dairy Queen at the intersection of the 2 country highways that went through town. The town was so small, in fact. If you needed anything else other than gas, mail, or fast food, you'd have to drive 45 minutes to the next sign of civilization. Since the town I lived in was so small, the business that the Dairy Queen received was minimal at best. It was usually only one person working on any given shift. The manager actually only had 2 other people on staff other than himself. Me for the morning shift and another guy for the evening shift. On average, during those days, I probably served about 3 customers per shift. The owner of the franchise knew all of this without a doubt. I always remember him as this depressed old husk of a businessman, with his life's work crumbling away before his eyes. He never tried to hide the fact that he wanted to sell the business, but for the longest time he couldn't find anyone who wanted to buy it, for obvious reasons. But that all changed very suddenly one day. The bossman came into work, and for the first time ever, there was a smile on his face. I'm finally doing it, sport. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm selling this old hunk of junk and getting it off my hands. Really? How? Who's the buyer? I don't really know, actually. I met him on Craigslist. He said he's a professional savior of failed businesses. Probably some kind of cartel money launderer. Says he'll only do cash, no questions asked. Watch your back around him, all right? All right, man. I don't think anybody's gonna be able to save this place, though. Well, you see, that's the beauty of the situation. That's not my problem anymore. True. Good luck in your future endeavors, I guess. You too, sport. I'm just gonna clear out my office, and the new guy will be in tomorrow. He said he's bringing his business partner, whoever that is. I couldn't care less. The wife and kids and I are moving to Florida and getting the hell out of this country hellhole. You should do the same. I know I always said you were my last hope for this place, but you're too young to be tied down to a place like this. Don't do what I did, kid. Those were the last words he ever said to me. They rang out in my head. I couldn't stop thinking about them for the rest of my shift, and even through the night. But I wanted to stay for a little longer, if nothing else than to see what this new guy would be like, and what his plans were for revitalizing the business. To say I was shocked when they arrived the following morning would be a gross understatement. For one thing, the businessman's partner was his son, and the relation was obvious, because they both gave me chills every time I made eye contact with them. I know I'm a country bumpkin or whatever, but these guys were a whole different kind of isolated from society. It was like they were some genetic cross between trailer trash and mountain man, and then inbred for 3 generations. You'll be working up front with my son Blake. I'll take care of everything on the back end. You shouldn't have to do anything different. That didn't make me feel any better about their business prospects. I couldn't imagine what one person could do to save a business without working their employees at least a little differently. But at least the new boss could speak. I couldn't say the same for his son Blake. In all the hours I worked with him, he never said a word. He must have been legitimately mute. He was able to do everything the job required except for the part where you have to speak to people. But he was never reprimanded for this, and I didn't want to accost a disabled person, so I just worked around it. However, very much despite all these strange aspects of the new management, they were successful, unreasonably successful. In a matter of weeks, the flow of business through the DQ went from its initial trickle to a slow and steady stream to an absolute madhouse every day. The weird thing about it was that nobody was ordering anything but blizzards. The number of blizzards I served in a day increased from 3 or 4 to 300 or 400, while the grill was never even turned on. Of course, I knew something had changed about the soft serve, and I had to know what. The first time I tried a blizzard from this new guy's recipe, I was blown away. Don't get me wrong, all blizzards are pretty good, but this stuff was like crack. It was sweet, savory, salty, and creamy in all the right proportions, like some master chef stuff. After that, I wasn't surprised when I saw the business continue to grow, with lines forming around the building, even drawing in people from other nearby towns. People I'd never seen in my 18 years in the area. But when I dared to ask what had changed, I was met with intense secrecy.
What do you want to know, huh? So you can steal my secret formula, sell it to my competitors, use them against me in your little business attempt? Back off, Squirt. You're just a service associate. You don't need to know.
And if you ask me again, or if I catch you trying to find out, I'll turn you into strawberry soft serve, you hear me? Okay, no problem, boss. I was confused after that. But instead of deterring me, his strange aggression only strengthened my curiosity. I started to think that he might have been adding some illicit addictive substance. My suspicions grew as another couple weeks went by, and it seemed like literally everybody in the Tri-County area was habitually visiting the DQ every day. They shuffled along in line like zombies, and when they got to the register and Blake was there, not even a word would be spoken. The transaction would go through automatically, everybody already knowing what they were going to get and how much they were going to pay for it. But when I saw that my own brother had fallen victim to whatever this was, I knew I had to do something. It was even hard for me to resist the urge to be eating blizzards all the time. One day, the boss had to leave for a couple hours to fetch some supplies from the supermarket 2 towns over. When he was gone, I told Blake I was taking my lunch break and slipped into the back of the store. The first place I went looking was the freezer, because the boss had told me to never go inside or I might get trapped. I'd been in there before he arrived, and I knew that was a BS excuse. Inside, there were no buns or patties or vegetables, just cream, ice, and flavoring, as though he knew he wouldn't be selling anything but blizzards. But there was an extra chest freezer in there that I didn't recognize. I knew that was where the secret was hidden. But when I opened it up, I almost immediately yacked. It wasn't any illicit substance. That would have been preferable. Stuffed inside the chest were 3 human bodies, mangled and broken and dismembered. There were pieces missing from each of them, hands and feet, and there were holes in their heads where their brains had been leached out. My old boss never made it to Florida. Neither had his wife and neither had his kid. The new guy had double-crossed them all and taken his money back, then used the remains to cut the blizzards and make cannibals out of my entire hometown. I ran out the back door so Blake wouldn't see me. Then I got in my truck and raced home. I didn't feel safe there, though. I was so racked with fear that the new boss would find me and kill me and make me a strawberry blizzard like he promised. And I was worried for my family. I wrote a note and left it on the dining room table, telling them to never go near the DQ and to watch their backs until the owner and son were in jail. I then called the police and left an anonymous tip. And once that was done, I packed up my things and skipped town. I had nowhere to go, but I hoped one of my friends in college would let me crash in their dorm until justice was served. But even after that's all said and done, I don't think I can ever go back there.